Alright, so once again, my name's Rachel. I'm going to be your instructor for today's Advanced Caption Keyframing course. And today's course is going to cover the use of captions and caption motion. And we're going to be using keyframing, which means we're going to precisely time what's going on in our slide. So standard captioning can create really neat effects. So if any of you took the Intro to Captions class, you know that there's quite a few interesting things that you can do with captions. But today we're going to kind of take that to the next level. We're going to start to incorporate other features inside the program, things like layer motion, things like interactive captions. So we're going to kind of take our captions to the next level. So we're going to do 3 different effects in today's class. And as with all of our other advanced classes, this is by no means the end-all be-all of things that you can do with captioning inside the program. But hopefully what this will do is kind of give you a starting point, an inspiration point, something to start to work from. So the first example that we're going to be create is caption keyframing with textures. And basically what we're going to be doing is creating something of a title slide. And we're going to take that title slide and sort of create our own fly-in effect. So oftentimes the fly-in and fly-out effects that are included with the software are really great, but they may not do exactly what you're looking to do with your captions. So we're going to take a look at how you can use caption keyframing to sort of create your own fly-in effects for your captions. And we're also going to take a look at using textures with our captions. So I'll go ahead and play through that first example for you so you can see exactly what it looks like. Alright, so that's our vintage illustration caption that we're going to be creating. This is going to be the finished product, what it will look like. The second example that we're going to create is a little bit more on the fun side. It's a good way to use your captions, what could be a very standard caption, creatively. And I think that the second example has a very good sort of scrapbooking feel to it because it allows you to kind of add in a personal message. So if any of you are creating slideshows as sort of a personal project rather than on the business end, this could be a really good effect for you to kind of take and build upon. And even if you are creating slideshows for business, there are quite a few ways that you could use this type of effect in your own slideshows. Just thinking, you know, maybe if you're creating a wedding slideshow and showing the bride and groom heading off to their honeymoon, you could write a sample letter like this. So this second example is called the handwriting effect, and it actually has audio, so I'm going to try and turn up my speakers. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it. Finish up that first one. And voila. So that's the handwriting effect. And then we're going to be creating a third example called the interactive gallery. And unfortunately, I don't have that example pre-made for you, but what we're going to be doing with the interactive gallery example is we're going to be creating a gallery, like something like this image that you see here. And we're going to have a caption located underneath this image that my mouse is hovering underneath. And it's when you click on that caption, it's going to take you on to the next few slides, which will tell you more information about that painting. So in essence, what we're creating is kind of a choose-your-own-adventure sort of slideshow. And you know, interactive captions can be a really good tool to use in your slideshows, and when combined with precise timing that keyframing gives you, can be a really neat feature. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started creating these examples. So I am going to put a new show in our project without closing this other one that we've created. We'll call this the working examples. So the first example, we're going to be creating 2 captions that use keyframes, and we're going to be placing a texture on one of those captions to create kind of a unique looking text on our screen. So the first thing that we need to do to get started is we're going to insert a title slide. And all you have to do that, right-click on our blank first slide and choose Insert, you'll see you have two options, Blank Slide and Title Slide. As some of you may or may not know, there's not much of a difference between the two. When you choose to insert a blank slide, ProShow will insert a blank slide. There will be nothing there on the slide except the background. And unless you've changed it, it's just going to be your standard black background. When you choose to insert a title slide, it's going to insert that blank slide, but then automatically open you up into your captions category of your slide options. So it's kind of saving you the step of having to double click on your slide. So let's go ahead and insert the title slide. And here we are in our captions category. So right underneath the preview window, we're going to type in our new caption, which, as you may recall, is the word vintage. Looks like some of my caption settings have carried over from the previous caption that I made. So let's do some adjusting. First thing, we can't really see our caption. Let's go ahead and just change it to a white caption so that we can actually see it a little bit. Let's go ahead and change our size to something much larger, maybe say 95. There we go. Now we can kind of see it a little better. We're going to change our font. Because we're going to be applying a texture to our caption, we want to choose a nice thick font, something that has a lot of space to be filled. So a really good font to use for this type of situation is a fairly common one called Impact. Now we've got this kind of crazy tilt on our caption, so let's go over to the left underneath caption placement, and you'll see our rotate is set to -22 degrees. Let's remove that. I'm going to make sure we're set right even. Check your placement, make sure you're set at a center alignment at a position of 50 by 50. That's going to place you right in the center of the slide. Make sure all the rest of your settings are fairly normal. Let's adjust our opacity. Look, it's at 75%. That must have been a setting that's carried over. Let's remove that. And for the time being, until we get into our caption motion, I'm going to go ahead and remove all of our fly in and fly out effects. I'm just hitting the reset arrows next to those. So we've got our caption set up. Now all we have to do is fill our caption. So if any of you, just out of curiosity, used the using texture on a caption before, have any of you done that? If you have, raise your hand. Cool. Alexander has. Cool. Well, for the rest of you, this is a really neat feature that allows you to do lots of really cool things. To enable this option, just simply click the off button next to use texture on caption, which will turn the option on. By default, it's going to give you the option of filling your texture with a gradient. And of course, you can click on the Edit Gradient option to go in and completely edit what your gradient looks like. What we're going to be doing today is filling our caption with an image. So I'm going to select the Image Radial button and choose Browse, and we'll say Select Image File. Now this course has its own toolkit, so I'm going to look here on my desktop in the Advanced Captions Toolkit, and we're going to be using the image Vintage Ads _48. It's kind of a vintage newspaper looking caption, so I'll show you the thumbnail of what it looks like. So Vintage Ads _48. And we'll say Open. Okay, so now take a look under where we chose to use either an image or gradient. You see we have a zoom option as well as a scaling option. Scaling allows us to choose how the image will fill the caption. So right now it's filling each individual character. We can change that scaling option to fill caption. Go ahead and turn that off. When we choose to fill caption, this is the one we're actually going to use for this example. But with the fill caption option, it's going to take the area inside this kind of yellowy orange outline, and it's going to fill that with the caption, or excuse me, with the image. Our third option is to fill the frame. Now when we talk about filling the frame, it means the entire preview area. Now this is an interesting option because when you move your caption for fill frame, you'll notice depending on where your caption's located, the what's filling the caption looks different. So it almost creates kind of a masking effect. Now don't get confused, it's not the same as masking, but it creates a very similar effect. And of course, you can always change the zoom value of your texture to change the way things look as well. For now, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my positioning to 50 by 50, and I'm going to change my scaling back to fill caption, because this is the look we're going for. We can see mostly just the artwork that's located at the top of this ad. Alright, so let's go ahead and click OK, and before we move on, I want to adjust the timing of my slide a little bit. I'm going to change my slide time to 6 seconds, and we'll just have a cut transition at the end. So let's have a 0-second transition. Alright, so we've got the basic basis of our caption setup. Let's double click, go back into our slide options, and let's go over to the Caption Motion tab. And this is where I was talking about we're going to create our own fly-in effect, something unique to this particular slide. What we want to do is, it's going to be a fairly simple fly-in effect as far as how we create it, but we are going to need some additional keyframes. So what we want to happen, and what I like to do when I'm setting up keyframes, is kind of draw things out. So at the beginning, I'll just draw it here on the keyframe timeline. At the beginning, we want our image to be almost unrecognizable. We're going to do things like rotate the layer, we're going to skew the layer, we're going to make it much larger, and then at about, I guess, the 4-second mark, so about right here, we're going to have the caption come in and look like it does now. So from this point at the very beginning of our slide all the way to the 4-second mark, we're going to be having lots of crazy happenings going on. But then from this 4-second mark through the end of the slide, we want the caption to stay still. So we need 1, 2, 3 keyframes. Alright, let me erase all my doodles. So, click the plus button to add a new keyframe. We want this entrance to take place over 4 seconds. So, I'm going to right click where keyframe 2 is and choose set time for this keyframe, and we'll set it to 4 seconds. Alright, so all we really need to do is change the way everything is set up in keyframe 1. And we're going to make sure that everything is set to its normal values in keyframe 2, so that all the change will take place between keyframe 1 and 2, and ProShow will do it all for us. So let's start out by making our image really large. Let's make it, say, 600. Just huge. And then we're going to skew the layer. So let's take our skew value and just drag it all the way to the right. It's getting even more unrecognizable. And we'll take our rotation value and just give it a 90-degree rotation. Now you'll notice in keyframe 2, my settings are set to automatic mode. So that means ProShow is automatically calculating what settings should be there. So I'm going to go ahead and change the 3 settings that I changed, font size, rotate, and skew. I'm going to change those to manual. And that's going to take me back to my original settings that we set up in Caption settings. So now keyframe 1 is set all crazy, keyframe 2 is set normal, and keyframe 3 should still be normal as well. Make sure those settings match between keyframe 2 and keyframe 3. And so if we play this through, we have that really nice effect that we saw at the beginning. Now, just to kind of polish it off, make it look a little bit better, I am going to go ahead and add a fly-in and a fly-out effect for this caption. And what I'm going to do is have a very basic fly-in effect. So underneath keyframe 1, if you click on the flag, you can choose a fly-in effect. I'm going to choose a very basic fade-in. And all that's going to do is allow my caption to kind of subtly start to fade in instead of showing up abruptly on the screen. And it's going to do the same at the end of the slide. So I'm going to click on the flag underneath keyframe 3 and choose fade out so that my layer can slowly start to fade out instead of the slide abruptly ending, and so does my caption. So let's see what the difference is. see it's a subtle change, but it's a nice change. So we'll leave it like that. So we've created our own fly-in effect, our own entrance for this caption. So let's go and set up the next caption that goes on this slide. Because remember, the title of our company that we're making this title slide for is Vintage Illustrations. So let's go into our Caption Settings tab. Let's click the plus button to add an additional caption. And we're going to type in the word illustration in all caps. Now we don't need it to be size 600, so let's adjust that size to something more normal, like 24. And I'm going to take my position of my caption. Let's place it just slightly lower than the previous caption. So let's do 50 by 75, whereas before we did 50 by 50. You'll notice some of our settings carried over, so let's take that skew value and remove that. Take the rotate value, remove that. Let's remove the texture on this caption. And take a look. It's a little hard to see here in caption settings, but if we look in caption motion, in the ending position, we can better see exactly what this caption looks like. So if you'll recall in the previous example, the word illustration was kind of stretched out to take up all of the space between the V and the E. So we can do that over here in caption settings by increasing our character spacing. So we can start to increase that about 210% or so. I think will work out very nicely. So we'll make it an even 210. Alright, so we've got those basics set up. Now all we need to do is add a fly-in effect for this one. So for this caption, you'll recall in the vintage caption, which I will click on now, we had a rotation of 90 degrees. So what I want to do is mimic that 90-degree rotation here with the word illustration, but I don't necessarily want to do the crazy font change and skewing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add another keyframe. Click the plus button, and we'll go ahead and set keyframe 2 to 4 seconds. Go ahead and leave those fly in and fly out effects. Since they're a very basic fade in and fade out, I think that'll still work here for this example. So once again, we're only going to make changes to keyframe 1. We're going to leave keyframe 2 as it is. As kind of a shortcut, just to kind of let you guys know, if you want to make sure that your settings aren't set to automatic, if you know you aren't going to be changing number 2 and you want them to be manual, even though you don't want to change any of the settings, what you can do is while you have keyframe 1 and 2 selected, and before you've made any changes, do a real quick copy, start to end, and now you notice that all of the settings in keyframe 2 are set to manual. So now when I make changes in keyframe 1, it's not going to affect keyframe 2 because those settings aren't automatically calculated. We've changed them to manual. So now that we've done that, we can make changes to keyframe 1 without worrying about keyframe 2. So what I'm going to do is in keyframe 1, I want to change my rotation to 90 degrees. And then what I'm going to do is just take the word illustration, which just have to kind of grab it in the right place. Okay, and then I'm going to take it kind of to the lower left-hand corner. So that basically it's going to be rotating on this axis of the left anchor point. See that left square next to illustration? We want it to kind of rotate on that anchor point. So I'm going to make that happen by moving it over to the lower left-hand side of the screen. And I'm just kind of estimating. As long as it looks about right, it should work. There are some settings located in your notes that would work really well too. Let's see what those say. 30 by 120, which is pretty close to what we have. We have 24 by 124. And that's all we have to do. Very basic. So let's take a look at what the finished product looks like. Voila. So a really neat effect, it's a nice introduction to your slideshow. It kind of gives that same feel that you get when you look at the intros to like large movie companies and stuff like that. Just a nice attention grabber for the beginning of your slideshow. Alright. So that is our first example, the textured caption example. Let's move on to our second example, the handwriting effect. And what makes this effect particularly impressive is that we're going to precisely time everything. We're going to space out when each of the captions comes on the screen to mimic that sort of handwriting effect. So for this effect, we're going to be using the images California, map, and postcard. So select all three, drag and drop them into slide number 2. We need a really long slide time for this example, so go ahead and change your slide time to 20 seconds. Now let's open up our slide options, and we'll go ahead and start in the layers category. We need to do a little bit of adjusting with our layer order. I want California to be my top layer. Alright, so don't worry about resizing all of these. We'll go ahead and just do that in our effects category when we set up the timing for all of these layers. Now let's go over to our editing tab. This California image is going to act as kind of just a floating picture in the upper left-hand corner of our postcard. And so we're just going to add an outline for this layer. For layer number 2, which is our postcard, it's going to be floating on top of the map, and we want to add a little bit of distinction to those two separate layers. So let's add a drop shadow to the postcard. And the map, one thing I did want to do for the map in my layer settings, I want to change my map. I want to change the scaling. Instead of fit to frame, let's do fill frame. There we go. Now let's go over to our effects category. Set up these layers, and once we set up the layers, we'll set up our captions. So let's work from the bottom up. First thing, let's take our map image and move it up just a little bit. Make sure it's still centered, so change the pan value, the X pan value to 0. And we're going to zoom in just a little bit, maybe 130% or so. And then in the ending position, we'll zoom in a little further, 150%. Now in your notes, it requests that you change the motion type or the motion speed for your zoom from smooth to linear. So are any of you familiar with the different motion speeds? Are you familiar with this concept? Hands, anyone? One person? Okay, that's cool. So motion speeds. What motion speed allows you to do is what it says. It's very self-explaining. Oh, good, Richard has too. So what it means is how fast an effect, a motion effect, a panning, zooming, or rotation is going to take place. So there's 4 different options. You've got linear, smooth, accelerate, and decelerate. So when you're working with smooth, I'll go ahead and just draw this out for you. When you're working with smooth, you're going to be working with a kind of bell curve shape. So at the beginning of the slide and at the end of the slide, you're going to be moving at the slowest speed. And if we're working with a zoom value, for example, it's going to start out zooming. If we're, say, going from, like we are here, 30% to 50%. With smooth, it's going to start out moving slowly, it's going to speed up, and then it's going to slow down. That's smooth. But it's a little bit more of a rounded curve like I originally drew. If you want to do linear, it's going to move at the exact same pace the whole slide. I think linear is probably the least noticeable out of all of the motion speeds. Like, it's going to be the most subtle. And then we've got accelerate, where it goes slowly at the beginning of the slide, and it's going to be moving the fastest at the end of the slide. and then decelerate, where it's going to be moving the fastest at the beginning of the slide and the slowest at the end of the slide. So those are the different motion speeds. Your notes request that you change your motion speeds for zoom to linear. And it's up to you. You could try it both ways and see if you can notice a difference between the two. Next, let's move on to layer number 2. For layer number 2, what we want is we want to start out with our layer extremely small, like pretty much non-existent and kind of in the upper right-hand corner. And we want it to rotate into place and come to rest at an angle taking up most of the right-hand side of the slide. And the angle might be a little bit the other way. But that's basically what we want to happen, and then we want it to stay there. So we're going to need 3 keyframes. At the beginning, our starting keyframe is where our layer is going to be small. It's going to rotate into place where it takes up most of the slide, and then it's going to stay that way through the end of the slide. So we need 1, 2, 3 keyframes. So let's click the plus button to add a new keyframe. We're going to set keyframe number 2 to 3 seconds. So we're telling it we only want you to take 3 seconds to come to rest. So for keyframe 1, our starting position, we're going to set our zoom value to 2%, and we're going to set our pan value to 40, which will take it to the right, by 10, which will take it down a little bit. And we need to add that rotation. So take your rotate slider and move it to the left, where it's at -360. Now in the keyframe 2 position, we're going to set up our zoom value, which is going to be at 100%. We're going to set our rotate value, which this is something you're going to want to remember. We're going to set it to -22. And then we need to set up our pan values. Let's just go ahead and type this in, 17 by 2. So now we can see most of the postcard, but not quite all of it. Alright, and now click in between keyframe 2 and keyframe 3. We're going to do copy start to end because we want our layer to stay where it is throughout the end of the slide. So remember this -22 because we're going to have to set this image, this California image, at that -22 degrees. We're going to have to set our text when we're, in quotes, writing on the postcard to that -22 degrees. That's what's going to help give it that kind of realistic look. So let's work with that California image now. For this image, recall our postcard doesn't stop its rotating and doesn't stop its entrance until the 3-second mark. So we don't want our California image to appear on top of the postcard until the 3-second mark. So let's take keyframe 1 and right click on it and set the time for this keyframe. We're going to set it to 3 seconds. Now let's make it a little bit smaller. Make sure, set it to 35%. And remember, take that same rotation, -22. And now you can just take your layer and drag it up into the corner of the postcard. And when you've placed it where you like it, choose Copy, Start to End. Now, the way it's set right now, this layer is going to immediately just pop onto the slide. So rather than have that happen, let's have our layer transition in, have it fade in nice and slowly and subtly. So let's click on the cut transition and choose just a regular crossfade blend. And we want this transition in to last 2 seconds. Don't want it to take too long, but still nice and quick. So right click at the end of the transition in and choose Set Transition Time and set it to 2 seconds. And let's go ahead and add a fade out at the end. We'll just add a fade out, and Let's set that transition out to 1 second. Alright, so that is it. That is all of our motion for our layers. There are 3 of them, so it does take a little bit to set it up. But now that we've got it set up, we can actually start to set up the captions for this example. And if you want, let's go ahead and just preview what this looks like. I'm going to preview just in the upper left-hand corner. And then this is the time where all of the writing will start to come in. So let's get that started. Let's go over to our captions category. And we're going to start out in our caption settings tab. Alright, this is a letter from son to his parents. So we're going to start out with the caption, Dear Mom and Dad, comma. Let's do some adjusting as far as how all of this works. We're going to change our font. We want something that kind of mimics a handwriting. You could pretty much choose any that you want. We're going to be using the Caption Monotype Cursiva. It's fairly common. You'll probably find that on your computer. Let's change the color. We want to change it to black. Let's change the size. This is a bit large. Let's go with 14 instead. Our text still has that really large character spacing that we had before. So on the left, underneath caption placement, go ahead and remove that character spacing. Take it back to 100%. Remember that we're going to be working on an angle. Our postcard is at an angle, so we need to change our rotation value to -22. As a last little step, just to give it a little bit of a realism, we're going to change the opacity of our caption to 75. You know, because when you're writing with, say, like a ballpoint pen, it doesn't come through at 100% opacity all of the time. So giving it a 75% opacity gives it a more of a realistic look. We also want to choose our text effects. So for our fly in effect, let's click the Browse button. We could do a simple fade in, but then all of our text appears at the same time. So we want to have our text appear like we're writing it. So we could do, there's probably a lot that might work. Since we don't have a fly-in effect that will trace each letter individually, we have to come as close to that as we can. And I think the best option is fade right. And here in the browsing area, it happens a little quickly, but we can change how long it takes for this caption to fly in our Caption Motion tab, so we can slow it down and make it look more realistic. So let's choose Fade Right. And for the fly out effect, we'll leave it at Fade Out. Okay, now let's actually place our caption. Let's go over to our Caption Motion tab. So let's kind of review as far as what's happened with our timing so far. Our postcard finished rotating into place at 3 seconds. And then the California, our beach image, started to appear, and it's going to take 2 seconds to fully appear. So we're at the 5-second mark. So it makes sense for our caption to not start to enter the screen until the 5-second mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change keyframe 1. I'm going to right-click, set time, and I'm going to set it to 5 seconds. And remember, this is just when the caption is going to start to appear. What we're going to do is we're going to change the fly-in time for this caption to 3 seconds. So that's going to give us a nice long time for this caption to appear. Let's preview. I'm just going to scrub through our keyframe timeline to show you what it looks like. So we'll start at the 2-second mark. Our postcard comes into place at the 3-second mark, and then our image starts to appear, and it finishes appearing at the 1-second mark, or excuse me, at the keyframe 1 point, which is the 5-second mark. And then our text starts to appear, but it's appearing in the wrong spot, so let's change that first. I'm going to click on my text and drag it right underneath where it says, right underneath that California image. forgot to do that. I got so excited about changing the timing. Alright, now let's, we want to make sure it matches in the starting and ending position. So do a copy, start to end, to make sure that happens. Now let's preview. There we go at the 5-second mark. And there we go. Dear Mom and Dad. And it goes at the right speed to where it just about works, that each letter appears one at a time. Alright? So, we've got our basic caption set up. Now we just need to have the additional lines come in. We're going to have 3 additional lines. So to make this happen and to save us a little bit of time configuring, what I'm going to do is in my captions list in the lower left-hand corner, I'm going to right-click on the Dear Mom and Dad. And I'm going to choose Duplicate Caption. I'm going to choose the second happening of Dear Mom and Dad, and I'm going to highlight it and change what it says. And we're going to say, California is gorgeous! Exclamation point. Now you'll notice it typed right on top of the first caption. So in the starting position, just drag it down and place it right underneath. And you can place it however you like. Make sure you do copy, start to end, to make sure that the text doesn't move. Now, if we take a look right now at how it looks, both of these lines are coming in at the same time, which isn't very realistic. So, for California is gorgeous, we need to change where our keyframe 1 is located. So we don't want this caption to start to appear until the previous one is finished. So we're going to right-click, choose Set Time, and instead of 5 seconds, we're going to choose 8. So we're going to space everything out 3 seconds apart. Now we're going to repeat these steps. So I'm going to right-click on California is gorgeous to add my next line of text. Choose Duplicate Caption. The second happening of California is gorgeous, we're going to change it to will call after the event. And then in the starting position, I'm going to change where this is located, drag it down beneath the previous sentence. Don't forget to do copy, start to end to make sure the caption doesn't move over the course of the slide. And then we need to change the timing. So we're going to take keyframe 1, right-click, choose Set Time, and add 3 seconds to what's there. So instead of 8, we'll do 11. One more time. Right-click on Will Call After the Event, choose Duplicate Caption. The second, or the very last caption, we're going to change it to say, Love, Sam. Drag that down. Make sure you do copy, start to end. We need to change the timing. Right-click on keyframe 1, choose Set Time, and set it to 14. Now you can see why we have such a long slide, because we got quite a bit going on here. But since we're duplicating everything, we're not having to reset all of these different options. Okay, so let's play it through the whole way and see what it looks like. Yay! And then it all starts to fade out. Last thing that we need to do, and this is kind of just a little extra, add a sound effect. We're going to require you to do a little bit of addition and subtraction here. So let's go ahead and add the sound effect. Hit Select Sound, choose Select Sound File, and there's a writing sound file in your toolkit. Turn my speakers on. So, you can see that the sound file is 35 seconds long. We don't really need a 35-second effect. So let's think about how much time you really do need. Told you there's a little bit of addition and subtraction. The writing actually starts, we can look in the captions category, the writing starts at 5 seconds, and the writing ends at 17 seconds. So with a little addition and subtraction, we see that we need 12 seconds of writing. 17 minus 5, 12. So let's go to our sounds category, and what we can do is hit edit fades and timing, and rather than try and pick a really good spot to crop out, I'm just going to have it start at 0 seconds, end at 12 seconds. I'm not going to do any sort of like crazy fade in or fade out. We'll just leave it pretty simple. And now remember, we need to set an offset. We don't want the writing to start at the beginning of the slide. We want it to start 5 seconds into the slide. So now if we look at our captions here in the Caption Motion tab, we can see our writing starts right when it's supposed to, and it ends right when it's supposed to. Now let's listen, watch the whole slide. Alright, so there is the handwriting effect. Again, a really neat effect for you to add to your slideshows. The writing sample sound effect is included in your toolkit, so as is the postcard, so feel free to use those in your own slideshows and actually take advantage of those. Let's move on to the third and final example, the interactive gallery. And for this example, what we're going to be doing is creating an art gallery, and there's going to be a painting on the wall that we want to examine further. And so when we click on the caption underneath that painting, the show is going to zoom in on this one work of art, and then it's going to move on to a separate slide that's going to give us in detail information about the slide. So this effect actually uses 3 slides. But what's cool is you can kind of build upon it from there and start making a more kind of complex effect if you want. So let's start. We're going to start out using this image, museum.jpg. Drag and drop into slide number 3. Now we're going to make this slide time 60 seconds long. We're not going to make you watch the entire thing, but it is helpful to have a really long slide to give people, especially when you're working with an interactive caption, to give people time to realize that they need to click on the caption. So let's take this slide, double click, open up our slide options. Let's start out in the layers category. And let's change the zoom value of our layer to 88%. Now we want to give this a kind of a matted look. So what I'm going to do is go over to my editing tab, and we're going to add that vignette outline to our layer. So underneath editing tools, enable the vignette option and then click the vignette button. We're going to change the type to solid color. We're going to fill the corners, make the border solid, and then change the color to white. And then click OK. Alright, so it looks nice and polished. It's a little dark and dreary with that black background. So what we're going to do is go over to our slide category and change the background to a navy. So I'm going to override the show background for this slide and click on set. Let's go over to the blue range and choose something in between light blue and black. About like so. And there's not a specific navy color that you have to use, just, whatever works for you. And choose set. Alright, so now this is the basis. These are the colors we're going to be using. This is the basic setup that we're going to be using, and now the whole rest of the slide is built from here. So we need to add that caption we were talking about. So go over to your captions category. Make sure you click on the caption settings tab. And we're going to type in the text, click to learn more. It's a little difficult to see. Let's change our font to the basic but ever popular Times New Roman. It's popular for a reason. Let's change the color of our caption to match our background. We can do that by clicking the Set button, choosing the eyedropper tool, and just hovering that eyedropper over our background. And we need to make this much smaller because we want this caption to fit underneath that painting. So, let's make our caption, instead of 14, let's make it 5. There we go. Now it's kind of small. Let's change our rotation a little bit. Let's do like a -2-degree rotation. And take your caption, drag it over, and place it right underneath that painting. And just kind of estimate, get it as close as you can. Go ahead and change your text effects. We don't really need much of a text effect, so instead of that fancy fade right we had before, let's just do a really simple fade in. We'll do a simple fade in, a simple fade out. Alright, last thing that we want to do is add interactivity to our caption. So, look in the lower left-hand corner, there's the option that says Caption Interactivity. You can associate actions with a caption. So when someone clicks on the caption, it will work. Now, you have to remember when you're doing this, you have to use the right output option. So if you're using DVD as your output option, it's not going to really work. So it has to be a PC version. It needs to be like an executable file, or maybe a share show on the Photodex website. Those are going to be able to use these caption interactivities. Whereas if you're doing like a YouTube slideshow or something like that, it's not, interactivity isn't going to be available. So keep that in mind as well when you're working on this. You have lots of different options. What I've seen a lot of people do is use this interactivity, say at the end of your slideshow, you can choose to open a URL. It's a good way to follow up with customers. It's a good way to give them the option of writing an email right away. So there's lots of different things. Definitely explore your caption interactivity options. In this particular case, what we're going to do is choose Next Slide. That's what clicking on that button, or clicking on the caption that says Click to Learn More will do. It will take us to the next slide. And really that's all we need to do. We're not doing anything too crazy with the caption motion, so we'll go ahead and just click OK. So when I hit play now, you can see if I hover my mouse over where it says Click to Learn More, you'll see it starts to blink. And that's how we know it's actually interactive. Unfortunately, it's not going to work until we actually output. So, what we want to do now, right-click on slide number 3, choose Copy, right-click in the empty space of slide 4, and choose Paste. For slide number 4, we don't need another 60-second slide. We can change our slide time to 2 seconds and change our transition time to 1 second. Let's double-click, open up our slide options. Here in the caption settings for slide number 4, we don't need that caption anymore. So go ahead and delete it. This is going to be kind of our transition slide, taking us from the slide where we had the interactive caption to the slide where we have information about the painting. So here, let's just go to the effects category, and what we want to do is leave keyframe 1 as is, and in the ending position we're going to zoom in and pan over so that the painting that's on the left side becomes more in focus. So we're going to start zooming in, and I'm just using my mouse wheel to zoom in, about like so. Again, just kind of estimate. But I think that looks better. It's a little bit more in focus. It's pretty clear that that's kind of what we're going for. And then we'll click OK. Now, for the next slide, what we're going to do is we're going to add the museum wall to slide number 5. And we're going to add this image of the painting. It's the same painting that was here. So we're going to select that layer, hold down the Control key, and add it to slide number 5. For slide number 5, because we're going to be having a bunch of text on the screen, we want to make it a bit longer. So let's change our slide time to 15 seconds, and we'll leave that transition time at 1 second. Let's double click to open up our slide options. Now we need to set up the entrance of all of these layers. Make sure that painting is layer number 1 and that the museum wall is layer number 2. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Let's go into our layers category into the layer settings tab. And for layer number 2, which is our museum wall, we want it to take up the entire slide. So change the scaling from fit to frame to fill frame, like so. And then let's go over to our editing tab. And, oh, actually, sorry about that. Before we do that, let's take our painting and go ahead and position that where we want it on the slide. So we want to change our zoom value to 60%, and then we kind of just want to move it up a bit. So let's take it to about -13. So set your position to 0 by -13. That's going to keep it in the center of the slide, but the upper portion of the slide. Now, we can go over to the editing tab, and all we're going to do is just add a very simple drop shadow for our painting, just to help it look more realistic that it's hanging against a wall. Alright, let's go over to our effects category, and we'll start with our background, our museum wall. And what we want to do here is we want to continue the motion path that we started in the previous slide. And we want to have it mimic the background wall that it's moving, with the painting. Because as we're zooming in the painting, we're zooming in on the wall. So we're going to continue that zoom in, and then we're going to stay still through the end of the slide. So we need to start motion and then stop it. So we need 3 keyframes. From keyframe 1 to 2, the motion will be happening, but from 2 to 3, the motion will be still. So let's click the plus button for layer number 2. We're going to set keyframe 2 to 4 seconds. So it's going to be that 4-second mark where our motion on both our painting and the background wall is going to stop. For the keyframe 2 position, we're going to zoom in to 140%. And what I'm going to do is just kind of move the wall up a little bit so that it's mostly the light part of the wall that we see here in keyframe 2. And now for for layer number 1, we're going to do the same. We're going to add a new keyframe, and we're going to set keyframe 2 to 4 seconds. So, just to make sure that our layer doesn't move in the keyframe 2 position, I'm going to do what we did with the captions earlier. I'm going to do a quick copy start to end. And that's going to turn everything in my keyframe 2 position to manual. So for keyframe 1, what I'm going to do is we're going to start it at 20%, and we're going to move it kind of to the lower left-hand side. So it's going to move. It's going to look like it's continuing the motion from slide number 4 here to slide number 5. And now from keyframe 2 to keyframe 3, everything should still match. So let's just preview what it looks like from the beginning of slide number 4. So see, it's not a seamless transition, and if we had a little bit more time, we could probably tweak it a little bit to make the transition between slide 4 and slide 5 a little smoother, but you can see they're pretty much in the same position. We could probably take slide number 5. We could probably take our painting down a little bit, like so. Might work a little bit better. There we go. That's pretty seamless. Alright, so now our painting is in place. Now we just need to add the information about the painting. So let's double click on slide 5 and go to our Caption Settings tab. Alright, so this caption, this is going to be the name of the painting. It's called the Gold Moon. We're going to leave the color as navy blue. We want to remove that rotation that we set before, and let's go ahead and remove that opacity that we set before. We can make it a bit larger so that it shows up to the average viewer so they can see it. And we just need to move it down a little bit. So let's take our caption and move it down towards the bottom of the screen, about like so. Alright, so that looks nice. Let's go ahead and add the rest of our captions. We're going to add another one. Click on the plus button, and it's going to say Joseph Pinnell, and that's the name of the artist. And we want to make this one a little bit smaller. It's not quite as bold, I guess, as the name of the painting. So we'll make this one size 10. And maybe we'll just move it over to the left side. Rather than navy, let's do black. I'm just kind of stylizing this a little bit. Let's click the plus button. Next, what we're going to do is add a pipe character, which if you're not familiar where to find that, it's located right above the enter button. Excuse me, you have to hold down the shift key and press the enter button, or the button right above the enter button. And we can make that kind of big. We can make that pipe character like 25 or so. And we'll just set that right next to Joseph Pinnell. Click the plus button, and now we'll add information about the painting. It was painted in 1915. Pastel on paper. And let's make this nice and small, size 8, and we'll make it white. And just set it right there to the right of Joseph Pinnell. So now we have all of the information about our painting. And let's just stylize this a little bit in the Caption Motion tab and choose exactly when we want each of these layers to appear. So we remember that our painting is going to finish appearing at the 4-second mark. So let's set the gold moon to appear at the 4-second mark. And we'll go ahead and leave that fly in effect, that fade in, for 1 second after that. I think that'll work out nicely. Now we'll work with Joseph Pinnell. Let's choose when we want this caption to appear. Since the gold moon appears at 4 seconds, let's offset this a bit and set it for 6 seconds. And then we can set everything else 1 second apart. So we'll take the pipe character and set it for 7 seconds. And the 1915 pastel on paper, we'll set that to 8 seconds. So now each one of these captions comes in one at a time. So we can see what this finished slide looks like. So then what you could do, if you wanted, is include maybe on slide number 5, you could include maybe something in the lower right-hand corner, maybe like an arrow or something like that, that would take you back to that interactive gallery. And then maybe you could have other text on the screen that take you to other information areas, like maybe on this pod or this display pod here in the center of the gallery, maybe you could put a click to learn more underneath that as well. And instead of having it take you to the next slide, you could say, take me to slide number 6, or something like that. So that's why I kind of call it the choose your own adventure effect, because you really can customize it to start to create a really interesting slideshow, and especially when you're doing it like in this form, it can be a very informative slideshow. So hopefully you guys got some good ideas for what you can do with captions and keyframing. It's more than having your captions move across the screen. That first example did show you how you could add some kind of motion effects to your captions. But I think the additional two examples showed you more how you can use keyframing as a way to control the timing of when text comes in your slideshow. Because that's really, I think, the power of keyframing is the power of controlling time. So with all of that covered, what I want to do now is go ahead and open up the floor to you guys, to any questions that you may have. Any questions about working with captions inside ProShow? All right, Alexandra. Alexandra said, how to adjust several lines of text exactly under each other and in the same space between them. Is there something like Snap available? What that's going to be is simply a matter of taking a look at the positioning settings. So you can see that, if you want to make sure, it depends on how you want to line them up, but since everything here is center justified or center aligned, 50-50 is going to be right in the center. So making sure that everything's aligned on the x-axis on 50 is going to keep everything in the center of my slide. So making sure that vintage is 50 by something and illustration is 50 by something, at least in the ending position, that's how we can do that. There's not necessarily a snap feature that's going to automatically align everything. The only way that really happens is if you are working with a single caption with multiple lines of text. So say, for example, let's see, if I took slide number 6 and chose insert blank slide and we do something like a title slide or something. So for example, here we could say, here is some text, and then I can hit the enter key and say, here is some more text. Hit enter, yada yada, yada yada, yada yada, yada yada, blah 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 blah. Okay, so we've got multiple lines of text, and we can maybe zoom in on that, make it a little bit larger. So you can see it's center aligned underneath caption placement. We can change that to left, and then everything's going to line up. We can change it to right, and then everything's going to line up on the right, and we can change it to justified if we want. So that is one way that you can kind of align everything. But as far as when you're working with multiple separate captions, so if we wrote, caption number 2, then what you're going to want to do is work with the position values and set it up to say 50. There is an option to snap to grid, so you can kind of define a grid on the screen by right-clicking in the preview window, and you can choose to snap to grid if you want. I'm not exactly sure how that works, or if that even works. It does look to work, actually. It more snaps to the horizontal lines than the vertical lines, though. It's pretty good. So that could be an option for you if you want to give that a try. I haven't worked with that a whole lot, so give that a go and see if that'll help you out. All right, Delmar, was the interactive caption used in the ProShow Workshop DVDs? I'm not sure. Delmar, that is a great question. I have not watched the new versions of the interactive DVDs. I can look and see if it says exploring captions. Yeah, the very last part of the workshop, special uses for captions. Says captions can do more than just display information, learn how to use macros to create digital proofing shows, as well as create interactive captions that let you do more with your show than you thought possible. So yes, interactive caption is used in the ProShow Workshop DVD. I think that's what you were asking. I'm not sure, now that you say that. Okay, Alexandra said, can we set default caption for start of slide. I'm not exactly sure what you mean there. Can you give me a little bit more information on that, Alexandra, and I will do my best to answer that. Okay, Delmar said, and while you type that, I'll check with Delmar. On the original ProShow Workshop 3x DVD, some of the button launched different PC executable files. Which class covers that type of feature? On the original ProShow Workshop DVD, some of the button launched different PC executable files. Which class covers that type of feature? Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure exactly how those were created. We don't teach a class that exactly does that sort of thing. So, I'm not even sure. Let me see. You could probably do run program and choose an executable file. That could be a good idea. So if you wanted to create that type of DVD where when you clicked on something it would launch an executable file, I think those older DVDs, I'm not sure. I don't want to give you wrong information, Delmar, but we don't necessarily have a class right now that does that. If you want, you could try doing a run program and have it, run that executable for the destination, put that executable in there. But if they were showing you an icon, I mean, you could do that for the text, then if you wanted to for an icon, you can do that in your layer settings. You can have, at least I think so. Maybe you can't. Oh, I guess not. Never mind. I thought you could have a layer be interactive, but you can't. You could have the slide be interactive, so at the end of the slide, I think it's under slide settings, you can have an action at the end of the slide that will run a program, etc. So, sorry, that was kind of a rambling. I'm not sure. Okay, so Alexander said when starting with a slide, caption is remembered from last setting. Can you set something as default? No. As far as I know, Alexander, it's just going to be carried over from your previous settings. Are interactive captions working on DVD? No. So for a DVD, interactive captions do not work. What Delmar is talking about, those ProShow workshops, those were burned onto a DVD, but it was burned as data, as far as I remember. So you couldn't actually watch those older DVDs. I don't know if that's the case for the new ones, but the older ones, you didn't actually watch them in a DVD player. If I remember, you watched them on your computer. Delmar says it's the same for both. So, yeah. So it's a DVD-ROM. Okay, cool. Alexandra, what is the difference in transitions between crossfade blend and crossfade blend linear? Not a whole lot. I'm sure there's a very technical difference. I can't tell the difference between them at all. We can give it a look though and see what the differences are. We can take a balloon. Let's get something that looks much different. Maybe this image. And we'll set this one. I'll take these two slides, right click and copy, right click and paste. And I'll just make that a 0-second transition. So between, sorry, this is getting long and complicated. We'll set the slides to maybe 1 second. And let me see if I can... Okay, let me set the transition time for 5 seconds between the two, and then we'll see. Okay, so for the second one, we'll do the other crossfade blend. See if we can tell a difference. Okay. Oh, whoops, that got changed to 5 seconds. They pretty much look the same to me. I'm guessing what the difference is, it has to do with how it's calculated. But now when you say use an example number 2.18, wait, hold on. Are you talking about... Okay, so I think that helps answer your question, Alexandra. I can't tell much of a difference. I'm guessing it's a difference in how they're calculated. So you can use either one. They're rather interchangeable. And then what not matched in keyframe means. What that means, it's kind of an older feature that's carried over from older versions of ProShow. And what it does is it allows you to match the starting position for this particular slide, for this particular layer. It allows you to match it to a previous slide. So you match the ending position with the starting position. So before keyframing was around, that is how you could continue an effect. Basically, you had a 0-second transition between your slides, and that was your basically, that's what was representing a keyframe point. So being able to match between one slide and the next, that's how you could do that. So it's one of those things that the developers aren't allowed to remove, even though it's not really as useful as it used to be. So that's kind of a long, detailed answer. But basically, I don't usually use it, but you can use it if you want to make sure the settings match in between slides. Alexandra said, good one. Good. Okay, so Delmar, what is the best way to combine a slide style with another slide style? So if I had a slide style and I wanted to add a caption keyframe slide, do I have to do it manually? Yes. You cannot combine slide styles. You can, because when you apply a slide style, it removes any other settings that you've already applied. So if you want to take a slide style and then add a caption to it, you can. And then if you want, you could save that combination of the slide style and the caption as a new slide style. And that way you don't have to recreate that caption and the style mixed together each and every time. So that's how I would suggest. Alexandra, what is difference in motion styles, variation, and font size, position, rotation? Let's take a look. Those motion styles work exactly the same way as the motion styles in your motion effects. So you've got the linear version, you've got smooth, accelerate, decelerate. So it's going to start to change all of these things. So even though you may not be having motion, that panning, zooming, rotation, you're still making changes. So the changes can occur slowly or they can occur quickly. So by choosing linear, they're going to change at the same rate over the entire slide. If you choose smooth, they're going to start out changing slowly, get faster, and then change slowly again. And then accelerate, starts out slow, moves faster, decelerate, starts out fast, moves slower. So motion styles and caption motion are the exact same idea as caption styles in motion effects. or excuse me, as motion styles in Motion Effects. Delmar, can I save off caption keyframing as a slide style? Yes, caption keyframing, or I think when you mean save off, I think you're referring to when you save a slide style, will your caption keyframing be saved? And it will. Caption keyframing saves everything in your slide options. So pretty much anything you do is saved. And Alexandra asked, can you cover a caption with something else? No. Captions are always at the top of the slide. So the only thing that can cover a caption is another caption. Yes, you can cover a caption with another caption. Just as you can adjust your layer order, you can adjust your caption order. So where was that slide that we did? So this slide where we've got multiple captions. If we move any of those captions, we can place them under. So no matter what, the gold moon is always going to be over these other captions. So we're covering up those other captions with the gold moon. See how the gold moon is on top of those captions? So you can use layer order to cover up captions with others. But no matter what, those captions are always going to be on top of your layers. Alexandra said, how about dingbats? I think you mean like wingdings and symbol fonts and stuff like that. Yeah, you can use those. I think I've got some installed on here, or at least I think you can use those. Webdings. There you go. That's the word test in webdings too. So yeah, you could do stuff like that, and that'll go over it. So if I move that caption up on top of the gold moon, there you go. See, now it covers it up. Delmar said, so there's no Unicode font support like Asian fonts. It only does true type fonts. Only true type. Okay, so example number 1, point number 9. Point number 9. Yes, when it says amber light, it means blue light. Yes, that is correct. Typo. Good find, Alexandra. Any other questions? True type font in another language, all other characters. I'm not quite sure what the question is, but I know any true type font will work. As far as doing it in other languages, the program's always going to be in English. If you want to type in another language, you can. If you want to do like Delmar was asking with the Asian characters, I don't think that there's a true type font that does that. And I could be wrong. Oh, but not true type Asian fonts. Maybe not. I'm not quite sure. Alexandra asked, Delmar said, but not true type Asian fonts, which I'm guessing is, yeah, I don't think. All I know is that it's supposed to work with true type fonts. Whether or not it works with Asian fonts, I'm not quite sure. if you guys are curious about that, you might want to, one, you could give it a try and see if it works, or contact our customer service team. Okay. Delmar said Unicode is 2-byte characters. Cool. Awesome. Okay, Alexandra, in font, what are styles good for? Styles are basically, it's like a slide style, but for a caption. So it was kind of the precursor to styles. So basically, you can use these to apply different effects to your caption. So like, say this kind of nonsense caption I wrote, I can apply one of these styles that are included with the program to it, like caution. It's going to make my caption look like caution tape. Or copper. Now it looks like copper. I can make it bigger and show you. So now it looks like copper. Or you can do metal, or smoke, or a watermark. Makes it kind of hard to see. Fire. It's pretty cool. So basically it takes all of your caption settings and you can save them into a style. Okay, and she said, how can you save it? Let's see, after you've made some changes to your caption. So you make any changes that you want, change the opacity, change text effects, outline, drop shadow, etc. All that good stuff. Then you go and you hit the Styles button, and you can say add a new style. And we can call it Rachel's Terrific Style. And we can choose which settings want to be saved for that style, all those little check boxes, and then click OK. It said it could not be done. Oh, it's because I'm not an administrator on this computer for some odd reason. So since I'm not an administrator on the computer, I can't save caption styles apparently. Sorry about that, guys, but that's what you would do. So just make sure that you are the administrator of your computer before you give that a go. All right. Cool. Any other questions? All right, you guys have been an awesome class, very inquisitive. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and hope to see you next week for more ProShow online classes. Look for the video of the class to be uploaded shortly. Thanks so much. Y'all have a good day.